What's going on, everybody? I hope you had an excellent weekend, and it was a very good weekend for me. This is NYG Jeffy 85 here, and first of all, I hope everybody enjoyed their Super Bowl Sunday. Obviously, if you're a Giants fan, a Cowboys fan, and a Commanders fan, you have a little bit more pep in your step because of obviously what happened in the Super Bowl. Though, either way, it was a great Super Bowl overall. It was a fun game overall. And I thought the game was very well competitively played. And what can I say about Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? I mean, Patrick Mahomes, the offensive line for the Chiefs, their running game of Isaiah Pacheco, Kadarius Toney made a play, and also Juju Smith-Schuster made some good plays. Chris Jones stepped it up, and in the end, Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs won a Super Bowl. A second Super Bowl over the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, the biggest play being that James Bradbury pass interference play against Juju Smith-Schuster on the left side. Whether you call it, whether it's interference or not, I thought it was a questionable call overall, but either way, Kansas City wins their second Super Bowl in the last 4 years, and we are now officially done with the NFL season. And now, the work begins. The work begins now for the New York Giants. So, while all Giants fans are celebrating the Eagles' demise in the Super Bowl, now we have to get back to work. And just by what we watched this entire season and the two best teams in the NFL, obviously, I have made this a point of the matter. Depth and trenches. That should be the key word for the New York Giants all off-season. 2 words. Depth, trenches. Because what did Kansas City do against Philadelphia? The offensive line. Depth of the trenches on the offensive line and the defensive line stepped up when they needed them to. Why was Philadelphia so good all year? Offensive line, defensive line, trenches. Also, why were these teams good? Not besides the coaching, depth. Both these teams had very good depth at very important positions. And this is exactly what Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, and all those Giants staff members, coaching staff, front office people should be looking for. We have got to go out this offseason and improve the depth on this roster. That is the number one goal for the New York Giants this offseason, is improving the depth on this roster all around. The offensive line, the defensive line, the linebacking core, the wide receiver unit, the running back unit, the tight end unit, cornerbacks, safeties, everywhere. The really good teams in the NFL. What makes a team good, and then what makes a team great? Obviously, we know the NFL is a war of attrition. You're obviously going to have guys during the season that are going to go down with injury. It's just part of the sport. But the really good teams have strong depth on their roster. So if, God forbid, you lose either a key player or a top player on your team, you have another player that's playing behind them, maybe not getting as much playing time as they normally do, but they can step right in and they can be able to maybe not fill completely what that player previously was able to do, but it wouldn't be that monster of a drop-off. And that's exactly, unfortunately, what happened to the Giants this year, is at key positions, when we suffered injuries, we had a major drop-off in talent, especially in depth. And what were a couple of positions got impacted by the depth on this roster? Well, first one I could say is the defensive line. Because when we had DJ Davidson and Nick Williams as depth defensive tackles at the beginning of the season, the Giants' run defense was a lot better. But the second that Leonard Williams started dealing with injuries, Dexter Lawrence got tired out, and then obviously the season-ending injuries to both DJ Davidson and Nick Williams, that's when the Giants' run defense started to really falter. That's one position that needed depth. The linebacker core. Now, obviously, yes, we need some starters in the linebacking core, but you know what we always need too? Competent depth. We need competent depth on that position. Jalen Smith, Micah McFadden. I like Micah McFadden, but not as a starter. I think this kid is more of a rotational piece. So I think that he's got to be more of a depth piece going forward, and we need two legit starting linebackers in the middle of the field. Cornerback. You could argue that we had a lot of banged up injuries with the cornerback position. Yes, Jerome Henderson is a phenomenal defensive backs coach. But let's just be real, we do need talent at the position too. And Adoree Jackson has a tendency to get hurt a lot. Aaron Robinson has gotten hurt twice so far in his career. We need depth at that position. And this is exactly where we need to be able to draft and find some players that could be competent depth coming in. We had some good depth this year. The wide receiver unit. How many times have Giants fans, including myself, not been happy about the wide receiver unit? Now, I know Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, and Richie James did an admirable job. But we need legit playmakers out there at the wide receivers position. And those three guys I just mentioned, they're good role players on this team. We need alphas. And unfortunately, the Giants, guys that they either were counting on, either underperformed or got hurt. You could argue running back depth. Saquon Barkley is a terrific running back. No guarantee he's back this upcoming season. But at the same time, we could use some good solid depth at the running back position. Because I think Gary Brightwell, he's a good running back. But he's not the kind of player we need as a true backup. And same thing with Breida. I would have no problem if the New York Giants let Matt Breida go in favor of a better depth running back coming forward. And obviously the offensive line. Especially in the interior offensive line. How many injuries did the New York Giants suffer on the interior offensive line and the offensive line in general? And we struggled to try to find guys that could step in and at least, somewhat not let the building collapse on us. Besides Andrew Thomas, the rest of the offensive line, including the depth, was poor. But the depth on the offensive line in the interior was not good. That's one thing the Giants need to do is A, hope for better health, and B, get some really good, true depth pieces on this team. Obviously, that's the name of the game here. Depth. You could even say it about the quarterback position. Because Davis Webb is more of a coach than he is a quarterback at this point. And Tyrod Taylor, I'm sorry, the dude is a walking injury. He got hurt more than he actually played in active games. And I hate saying that because I like Tyrod Taylor, but he was always hurt. So the biggest problem with this New York Giants team this past season was the depth on the roster. And that is the number one thing, besides upgrading the talent in the starting position, the number one thing this Giants team needs to do if they want to catch a Philly, if they want to catch a Dallas, if they want to catch some of these teams in the AFC. You've got to upgrade the depth on this roster. So that way, if you have guys that go down in the season due to injury, you have guys that can step right in, and you have guys that could take over, and it won't be that monster of a drop-off for the New York Giants during the season. That is the reason why, back in the 2000s and the early 2010s, why the Giants were such a good team. If you don't remember, 2007, why were we so good? We had depth all around that roster. All around that roster. When we lost some key starters, case in point, I'll start with the cornerback position. We lost R.W. McQuarters and Sam Madison due to injury. What happens? We had young players like Corey Webster and Aaron Ross that stepped right in and they got the job done. Even the safety position, we had Jabril Wilson, we had Jabril Wilson there. We had guys that could step right in and play the position when needed. Wide receiver, same thing. Steve Smith, David Tyree, obviously Toomer and Burris when they were there. Tight end, you lose Shockey, you had Boss. Offensive line, you had depth. You need to have good depth on your roster because in the NFL, guys get hurt. And the best teams are the ones that have sustainable depth behind on their roster. Those are the teams that normally go out there and find ways to win. So that's why Philadelphia and Kansas City were so good this year. Not only because they have great coaching, not only because they have great quarterbacks, not only because they have great skill players and defensive linemen, they had strong depth. Because when they lost players during the season, they had other players good enough to step right in, and it wouldn't be that monster of a drop-off. That's one of the biggest things the Giants need to do this offseason is upgrade the depth on this roster. That is including draft picks. That is including free agent pickups as depth players. That is including undrafted free agents, trades, whatever you do. When the depth on the roster is improved, the New York Giants will become a more improved team. And that is when the Giants will be a sustainable team. Because when you have good depth, when eventually your starters or some of your older players either play out their contracts, you have younger guys or depth pieces that will get their opportunity to step right in and become starters. That's what Philadelphia and Dallas have done. They have had drafted good depth behind their starters, and when eventually those older players or those guys that have contracts running out and they decide not to bring them back, you have other guys that can step right in and take over. That is what good teams do. And that is one of the biggest things I'm looking for Joe Schoen to do this offseason and Brandon Brown is upgrade the depth on this roster, obviously starting in the trenches. Then you could start at wide receiver, running back, cornerback, safety, linebacker, outside linebacker, inside linebacker, everywhere, running back. When the team's depth is improved, the Giants will improve. So you guys let me know in the comment section if you guys agree with this. If the Giants need to focus on also not only bringing back their own free agents, not only upgraded certain positions through the draft and through free agency and trades, but also upgrade the depth on this roster to put us in position to be able to go out there and win. You guys let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree with that. But I hope all you guys enjoyed the Super Bowl. I hope everybody enjoyed your weekend. NFL season, while the season may be over, the content doesn't stop. Just like I said, just like my other fellow Giants buddies, there's still be a lot to talk about. Free agency, drafting, draft prospects, free agent targets, trade targets. Still a lot to talk about when it comes to the New York Football Giants. Because while one thing ends, the season might be over, but the off-season is just beginning. I hope all you guys enjoy the rest of your Monday. Enjoy your rest of your Monday morning. Take it easy, and as always, let's go New York Football Giants. Together blue, everyone.